Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. And this morning on Cool Your Heels with Lillian, our special guest is Ann Alsina, who is going to be talking about women and wealth. So good morning, Ann. How are you doing?
Great. How are you today?
I am fine. The sun is shining. No people in sight for at least 100 miles.
As long as it's at least 6 feet, right?
It's 6 feet and 50 or less people can get together.
Yes.
Let's everyone keep this in mind. So if you still have to scold your son, just put a ruler between you, measure out the required distance, put the pillowcase across your face, and away you go. So this morning we're going to be talking about women and wealth. What's the problem with women and wealth? Does it exist or is it just a myth?
It does and it doesn't. It does in the sense that 90% of all women will be solely responsible for their finances at some point in their lives. And the problem there is twofold. One is that we don't do a great job of financial literacy in this country, teaching people how to manage money and make wise financial decisions. And secondly, oftentimes in a marriage, one partner has major control of the finances or handles most of the financial decisions. Traditionally, that's been the man, not always, but traditionally. And so there's a number of widows or divorcees who don't know anything about their finances and haven't been managing their own money for a long time and are now suddenly thrust into a position where they need to learn. Beyond that, women spend often a large number of years out of the workforce, taking care of children, taking care of elderly parents, and they live longer. So those things combine to make financial planning for women something that needs a little more help sometimes.
Absolutely. And if you take a look at all the Targets and Walmarts and drugstores and all the other places, you will see ladies between the ages of 70 and 90 working. And the reason why they're working, folks, is because, or they're waitresses, is because, A, they had a high school diploma and were not recognized for their other skills that they learned in life, or B, that was the only job they could get, and it will not be enough for them to retire on, so they have to work until the day they drop dead.
Absolutely. We're also seeing a rise in what's called gray divorce, that is seniors who are getting divorced. And typically after a divorce, what we see is that a man's standard of living increases and a woman's standard of living decreases.
And that's been going on for a long time. I know I've met a lot of ladies whose husbands in their 60s or 70s fall for the secretary of 20 and 30, walk out, and all of a sudden the lady is not only responsible for her health and wealth of herself, but she has maybe 3+ kids to take care of as well, and maybe aging parents on top of that, or maybe they have a disabled child emotionally, mentally, physically, that she is the sole provider for. And listen up, folks, there's just no way that she can handle all this, because the man in her life or the boyfriend in her life or the stronger identity in her life has left, and they really don't feel like they're responsible for what happens after they leave.
Sadly, we see this quite often. We've also seen it in some cases where people didn't have enough life insurance and they passed unexpectedly and young.
Yes, and there are a lot of people, especially ladies or women, who don't understand how to play, well, let's call it the insurance game, because a lot of insurance company now also sells annuities.
Yes. So in this, are you saying?
I'm saying that ladies do not know that. I know when we moved from Michigan down here to Pennsylvania, we were contacted by an insurance person who wanted to sell us an annuity. And my husband, who was very savvy about stocks and bonds and everything else, he signed up for the annuity. And while I've been told that wasn't the greatest thing in the world, for an economic pandemic that's happening right now is the best thing, because they are not being affected by the stock market crashing.
Absolutely. So annuities can be an absolutely wonderful thing um, if they're used appropriately. I think they can be oversold simply because there's often a high commission paid to them. But the great thing about an annuity is that it is going to provide a guaranteed stream of income, and that guarantee is made by the insurance company. So it's not dependent on the market. It's a guarantee that no matter how long you live, you're always going to have money coming in, a paycheck coming in. You can't ever run out of money. We use them a lot with older women who are worried about running out of money in old age if they live to be 95, 100, 105, which women are more likely to do than men statistically. So annuities have a great role in all of that. I think people need to do their research and see about the fees that are underlying them and why that particular annuity is being recommended. And also, I would be leery of someone at a young age being sold an annuity, people in their 30s or 40s. That's often not appropriate. It depends on the situation.
Absolutely.
But generally speaking, annuities are something we're going to see being sold 5 years out from retirement.
And I think that in order for women to accumulate a portfolio, in order to have something when they retire, I think a lot of ladies are gun shy, and they ought to find out who their financial advisors are associated with their particular bank, make an appointment, and go in and talk to them.
Absolutely. So in our firm, Covington Alsina, we have a focus on women. And so I generally won't work initially with just one side of a couple. I always ask to meet both people. Even if one is going to be handling the finances, the other one needs to at least know me and know what's going on and have a general idea. Along with that, I always tell people if you're looking for an advisor, if you don't have one, whoever your advisor is, you need to find out how they're paid. If they're a fiduciary, meaning that they have a legal requirement to act in your best interest, or if they're just a commissioned salesperson. Another thing you should always do with your advisor is go to finra.org, that's www.finra.org, and do a broker check on them. So that allows you to see if there have been complaints, if they've had fines or suspensions against them. Those are big red flags. That's probably not someone you want to be working with. And it needs to be someone who's willing to talk with you. I have client after client who's told me that they moved advisors because their advisor wouldn't talk to them, looked through them, kept talking to their husband and ignoring them. So it has to be someone that you want to work with as well. And again, like you said, make sure you know them, make sure you've talked with them, look at what your plan is. Are you on track for retirement to pay for your kids' college? If something happens to one of you, do you have enough insurance? All of those kinds of things can impact you.
And make sure that talk with your husband and have him give you a list of all your stocks and bonds. And I'll tell you why. Because should they pass before you, you're the one who's going to have to call them up and try to get the information and transfer it into your own name. And I'm telling you right now that to get a death certificate is $20 a copy. And you need at least, I bought 20, and guess what? I used every single one of them, because every transaction you do with a financial institution or a credit card company, you're going to need that death certificate.
Right. Some other things you can do, I recommend, is obviously your estate planning. So you need your wills. But more important than the wills in some cases is your power of attorney and your medical directive. These allow someone to make medical and financial decisions for you if you're not capable of doing that for yourself. You definitely need a power of attorney for your husband or your spouse, simply because no one is going to talk to you about those accounts that are in his name only if he's in the hospital. Beyond that, it's really important to review all of your beneficiary designations. I actually had a client recently. She was recently widowed. A friend of hers was also recently widowed. Her husband had never updated the beneficiaries on everything, and so his ex-wife received all of their life insurance. So it's important that your pension, your 401k at work, all of your IRAs, all of your life insurance has up-to-date beneficiary statements, because those are going to pass not through the estate, not through your will, but directly by beneficiary statements, and it's important that those are all up to date and you review those regularly.
And also make sure you have a living will.
Yes, that's
among
part of the
your
medical
financial
directive.
portfolio. And if you really are afraid your son or your daughter is going to do you in or try to get control of your estate to declare you mentally incompetent, go to a senior, an elderly estate lawyer and have everything put into a trust and lay out the details of what will happen under that trust.
Right. So if you are concerned about family members, and unfortunately we've seen it where family members have taken advantage of aging or elderly parents, you can establish something called a revocable or revocable living trust. While you're alive, it works just like you. It's a box that you can put things in and take things out of. When you pass, it becomes very easy to administer because it avoids probate. But if you become mentally incapacitated, it allows the trustee you appoint to just step in and act in your stead, act for you. And we use that quite a bit for incapacity planning, particularly for single women. If you're concerned about your child taking advantage of you, then in that case, it doesn't have to be a child who's your trustee. It can be a bank, it can be an attorney, it can just be a trusted friend or another family member who can be that trustee to step in and take over that for you if you are not capable of doing it for yourself.
And the other thing you need to consider are those insidious credit cards. You need
Absolutely.
to be very careful about them because they are part of your estate.
Yes, so what would happen is if you pass away with debts is that your estate will settle those debts. So the estate would pay them off. If you die without any money, your debts are not going to be passed on to your children. That's not a reason to go out and run up credit cards. But if you pass, your estate is going to have to pay off all of those debts before whatever's left goes on to your family members or whoever you've left your estate to. It's also important for women to realize that in many states, credit cards are not considered marital property. So what that means is that if the debt is in your name and you get divorced, you're going to be responsible for that debt. So just be aware of that. That's a state-by-state law. Here in Maryland, where I'm at, credit cards are considered personal property and not marital property. So if you have a joint card that you're the primary on and your husband is spending on that and you get divorced, you're responsible for that card.
Now, a question some ladies ask me is, if I get divorced from my husband, can I still claim half of his Social Security?
Yes. So the way Social Security works is that if you've been married 10 years or longer, then when you go to claim Social Security, you're entitled to either all of yours or half of your ex-spouse's, whichever is greater. Also, when your ex-spouse passes away, you step up to 100% of their benefit. And this doesn't affect them. Even if they remarry, they'll never even know you've done it. It doesn't impact them at all. But if you've been married 10 years or longer, you're entitled to all of yours or half of your ex-spouse's, whichever is greater. And then when they pass, you step up to their full benefit if it's greater than yours.
And something else that people often ask me, or ladies, is what happens if you enter into a common law marriage after you've been with a person for 7 years? Is the property that you have considered you both own it, or is it just still mine?
So part of that is going to be a state by state because some states recognize common law marriages, some do not. In a case like that, I would strongly recommend if there is no actual marriage with a legal marriage certificate, make sure that any property you have is in your name only. Because once he is added to your property, he's a name on your bank account, you've put him on the deed to your house, that's joint property regardless of whether the state recognizes common law or not.
And the other question I'm asked a lot about is when you file your taxes, do you file them jointly or do you file them separately?
Our tax code is more advantageous if you're married if you file jointly. So we usually recommend that people who are married, even if you're divorcing, married filing jointly is typically more advantageous. And if you do want to keep your finances separate, particularly if you're divorcing, what we do then is we have the CPA run taxes for each individual as if they were doing married filing separately, and then run the taxes for married filing jointly. and whatever the savings is to file jointly, we split between the two parties.
So people often ask, well, when is a good time for us to start saving and putting away for retirement? 401 is good, but you have to understand that that's tied to the market. So if the market's not doing well at the moment like it is now, your 401 looks pretty flat. However, at the same time, it's in there for the long run, so you shouldn't be too concerned.
Well, they always say that the best time to plant an oak tree is 100 years ago. The second best time to plant an oak tree is today. So with that in mind, it is always a good time to invest. Right now, the market's down substantially, so you're buying a lot more shares with every dollar you put in. I've been telling people with everything going on, the worst thing you can do is panic and sell right now. The best thing you can do is just keep investing in your 401k, your IRA, and if you have money on the sidelines, now is a great time to buy. It's really important to start as young as possible because you have the benefit of compound interest, right? That means that your money is growing without you doing anything other than just putting it in and leaving it alone. And if your employer offers a match for your 401k, 403b, the Federal Thrift Savings Plan, whatever it is, if there's a match and you're not taking full advantage of that, you're just giving up money. It's free money that comes in that you haven't had to do anything for except save a little bit of your own. So you always want to take advantage of that.
Now, some people are wondering about getting those credit cards that some of the banks are offering and even some of the independent larger credit cards are offering where you get 3% or 4% or 5% back. Is that a better deal for a type of credit card that they should have and use all the time, or is it better just to limit the amount of credit cards you have altogether?
So there's two pieces to that. One is your credit score, right? And the credit score, having up to 5 credit cards is a benefit to your credit score because you have credit and you're using it wisely. So having a card in and of itself is not a bad thing. It can actually be a good thing because you're establishing credit. It's the percent of utilization, meaning how much of my credit card, if I have a $10,000 limit, have I charged $9,000 on it and I'm carrying a balance? That's not a good thing for your credit score or for your bank account because now I'm paying interest on that. If you can use the card wisely, meaning I use it and I pay it off every month, any of those cashback cards or mileage cards are all really great ideas because now I'm just getting a bonus for my ordinary everyday spending, again, as long as I'm paying it off monthly. There's a website called bankrate.com that has a great job explaining different credit cards and doing an analysis if I carry a balance or I don't carry a balance or I travel a lot or I don't travel a lot, and it'll tell you kind of this is a good card for you given your circumstances.
Well, that seems to be very detailed and also good advice because I don't think that many women receive this kind of financial advice when they're teens, for example. And yet teens are the fastest growing number of card holders and who run up debt faster than any single woman that I know.
Absolutely. As I said at the beginning, we do a very poor job of financial literacy in this country, teaching people all of these things, and yet at the same time, our lives have become infinitely more complex. I strongly recommend, people will say to me all the time, they'll say, oh, I don't need a financial planner, I don't have any money. And that's absolutely not the case. Sitting down with a fee-based or fee-only financial planner, someone, if you only buy an hour of their time, who can sit down and give you an overview and give you some advice saying, build up your emergency savings, pay down your credit card debt, change your health insurance policy to this next time you have open enrollment. All of those kinds of things and just giving you some general advice and education, well worth paying for an hour of their time, even if you don't have a big, complex portfolio for them to manage.
Now, when I was growing up, my dad said that you need to have enough money to pay your rent for 6 months and enough money to pay for food for that during that time. And, of course, in those days, rent and food were nothing, along with gasoline and car insurance. But that equation doesn't hold anymore. So what kind of equation or percentage of a paycheck do you tell women to calculate when they're planning their monthly budget?
So we actually still use that 6 months of living expenses. Your dad was very prescient there. We used to, as an industry, financial planners usually recommended 3 months of living expenses in cash, sitting in a money market or a high-yield savings account. After the financial crisis, the 2008-2009 market crash, and people were having trouble finding work, or if they were getting work, they weren't coming back at the same rate they were making before, we found that really 6 months of living expenses is important to have. But that's a long-term goal. So what I mean by that is that it's not, I can't do anything with my life until I have 6 months of cash. It means that that's something I'm going to slowly build to, whether that's I can put away $10 a paycheck or I can put away $1,000 a paycheck, depending on your circumstances. So you just slowly keep building to that, knowing, though, that I'm going to build and then I'm going to need new tires, or I'm going to need a car repair, or my dog got sick, and I'm going to have to pull out of savings. And that's okay. That's what it's there for, because then I'm going to start building it back up. Right now we're seeing a lot of people are being laid off with everything going on, especially restaurants, small business people are seeing huge financial impacts. So this is a time when having all of that cash on the sidelines would be a really great thing to have. So still building up to that 6 months, but it doesn't mean you can't do anything in life. You can't save in your 401k, can't do other financial things until you've got it. That's just your long-term goal to have it. I also recommend that people put that in something that they don't see. So whether that's a savings account that you don't see when you check your balances, or a money market that's not associated with your account, that you don't see it at all, and you just direct deposit that money every paycheck into that account. There's a lot of research that shows that if two people are going to go out and go to the mall, and I look at my bank account and I see $10,000, even knowing I have to pay my mortgage, my car payment, I have to pay the insurance bill, I need to buy groceries, and so really I've got $700 that I could actually spend. If you go to the mall with me and you look at your bank account and it actually shows $700, we both have $700 we could spend. But the person who's looking at their account and seeing $10,000 typically spends more than the person who looks at their account and sees $700. So hiding that money in a money market or a high-yield savings account that you don't see helps reduce your overall spending and keeps you from spending more than you normally would.
And learn how to say no to yourself, or do what my son does. And he's a father. He has 3 kids. Okay, 2 of them are twins, and they're 13 and they're in high school. They're girls. And then he has a little one of 6. And he says, I look at it and I say to myself, A, do the girls really need it? Can we afford it? And can we do without it? And he says that slows you down tremendously during those first emotional gut thing that I need to buy this for my kid.
Absolutely. Something else that makes sense, and this sounds kind of crazy, but if you just hold it in your hand for a little bit, carry it around the store, and then set it down. In your brain and your subconscious, you've still had it, and then you set it down and don't buy it. But slowing down and really looking at something to say, do I need this or not, is absolutely wonderful.
I think so, and it's, I mean, he's a graphic artist, and his wife is the fashion industry. So yeah, people, they have a good solid salary coming in to take care of their kids and the house and everything else. But at the same time, you have to understand, I was a divorcee. He was brought up under the poverty level when he was growing up with me, because I had not been trained to go into the workforce. Well, I've come a long way, baby. But when I was first out there, I was not making that much money because I wasn't skilled at anything. So he remembers that as well. And I think that people tend to gloss over what happened when they were kids. And of course, when I was getting to be ready to go to college, the first words out of my parents' mouth were, when you turn 21, you will be on your own, and you will be on your own economic level. You will no longer be on your father's and my economic level. So remember that.
That's a great point. Yeah, what we see often, too, that you mentioned, talking about where he's at, your son is at now. I work with people all the time, professionals who make great money. And they say to me, where is all my money? I don't understand. I feel like I live paycheck to paycheck. And it's because in these days it is so easy and we're so busy that we run through the drive-thru. And we say, well, it was just Chick-fil-A. It was, $15. And $15 is not a big deal to most people to incomes, professionals. The problem is not the 15. The problem is that we do that once or twice a day, day after day after day, and the money fritters away. So I often recommend people stop and think consciously about where their money's going. A very famous American business professor, Edward Deming, helped revolutionize Japanese industry. They still give the Deming Award there. With that, one of the things he said is that which is measured improves. So I have people look at their spending on a regular basis, whether that's once a week. You sit down and you look and you see where your money really goes. When we put up graphs on the big screen with clients doing planning, invariably I hear, wow, we spend that much eating out.
Or going to Starbucks.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not a financial planner who's opposed to people going to Starbucks. What I tell people is this: when we sit down and we look at cash flow, if I'm paying all of my bills, and paying bills includes saving what I need to save to be on track for my goals, right? My emergency spending goal, emergency savings goal for my retirement, for my kids' college. If I'm on track for all of that, and I'm saving enough for all of that, whatever I have left, that's okay. If you want to spend that all on a pair of shoes, if you want to spend it all going to Starbucks every day, that's fine. The problem is that we spend first, and then we try to save. So if you put those savings for all of your goals, whether that's college, retirement, vacation planning, anything like that, the new house, the upgrade to the current house, if you're saving for all of that, whatever you have left over is your discretionary, and that's your spending, and that's your fun money. And fun money is different for everyone, what they want to do with it. So I'm not opposed to Starbucks in and of itself. I'm opposed to people frittering away money by Starbucks, drive-thrus, whatever, if they're not meeting their savings goals.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, when I was single, I would take a look at my paycheck and I would plan out where each part of that money was going to be sent to in order to pay the bill, and how much money I would have left at the end of the month. And while it's a scary prospect, if you're in the lower echelons of earning money, at the same time, it is possible to save money. I saved over a 10-year period well over $10,000. And folks, I started out at $5 an hour.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yes. So and it took me 25 years to pay off my student loan. But I paid it off. And I was delighted, and I had perfect credit, still do. So it's something that you can do, but you have to learn how to say no.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or say yes within your means.
Or say yes within your means. Or if it's what I used to tell my son, if you really, really want it, start collecting your pennies, put them in a jar, find odd jobs, ask people if they want their sidewalks swept or their garden weeded. And I said, people are funny. They all have a thing that you won't see them doing, and they rather pay somebody else to do it. And I said, you can make an awful lot of change that way. And
Absolutely.
He took me at my word, and guess what? He bought himself a pair of inline roller skates. This is during the 70s. He bought himself a boom box. I mean, he got stuff he wanted because he had to earn half, and I would meet him and match him for the other half.
And speaking of matching, a great thing you can do if you have children and they are doing work like that, you can file a tax return for them, and they're probably not going to owe any taxes if they're not making a whole lot. And then you can open a Roth IRA for them and let that money grow. Start now, get them into the habit of saving a part of it. I know with our kids we match. We let them put in part of their work income, and we put in a piece for them. We file a tax return, and now they have a Roth IRA that they've started and will continue to grow for them throughout their lives.
Or start a life insurance policy for them. They're offered when they go into kindergarten, and keep on paying that, and by the time they graduate from college, give it to them.
Yes, we actually, when our children were born, we purchased variable universal life policies for both of our children. But there's a lot of different ins and outs of that. I would recommend anybody, before you do that, sit down with someone who's very knowledgeable in life insurance and look at some of the best ways to do that. But it can be a great way. If you're on track with your other goals and have some discretionary income, saving in that kind of vehicle can be very helpful.
I started with State Farm. I did everything with State Farm, and he still has the policy, and he says, I can't thank you enough. And I said, well, it's recommended. And I thought, well, what the hell? I know that's not the greatest way of looking at things, but I was very lack of financial knowledge, and it was recommended highly to me by a father who thought, I'm going to try and help Ben's mom because she looks like she's struggling. And so he was a banker, and he must have known what he was talking about, because my son was just delighted when I signed it over to him after he graduated from college, and he still has it. So I just think that, as Ann says, you need to go to the appropriate person who is licensed to do these things, but there are ways that you can get your daughter started financially, have something put away, because after they reach its policy length, then they can start dipping into that life insurance policy should they need it for an emergency.
Absolutely. It functions as an additional form of savings for them.
Yes. So you can't really fail, but you do need to go to somebody like Ann to have it explained. So, Ann, please tell everybody where they can find you on the World Wide Web, all the contact information you want to share, and we'll wrap it up.
Wonderful. Thank you. So our website is covingtonalsina.com. So that's www.cov as in Victor, INGTON, ALS as in Sam, INA.com. We're located in Annapolis, Maryland, but we do business across the country and actually in a couple other countries as clients have moved around the world. You can email us at info@covingtonalsina.com, or you can call the office directly to schedule a phone consultation, or if you're in the local area, a meeting at 410-457-7165.
That's great. And ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages, you can hear this interview with Ann Alsina all over again over at https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. Look on the right-hand side of this page. You'll see Cool Your Heels. Click on it, and you will hear the interview. You can also, for those who are computer challenged, we have a sizzle line, which is a phone line. Call the number, and you'll hear the interview immediately. You'll also be on iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Spotify, ALEXA, and a host of other places, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, that you can go and listen to. And before you go away and stray, Dr. Johnson in 1779 had this to say: he that runs against time has an antagonist, not subject to casualties. Thank you all very much for listening, and until next time, have a great day.